They say some roads don't just take you from point A to point B. Sometimes they take you somewhere else. Somewhere the maps don't recognize. Ask any veteran trucker on the Sichuan-Tibet line about Swallow Cliff, and they'll tell you, if the fog rolls in thick enough to swallow your headlights, pull over. Because at Swallow Cliff, the distance you drive and the distance you travel are two very different things. 2 years ago, in the dead of winter, a driver named Old who was hauling emergency supplies. He was a man of logic, 20 years behind the wheel, trusting only his brakes and his steering. But that night logic failed him. As he entered the winding pass of Swallow Cliff, a fog descended. It wasn't just mist. It was a heavy, suffocating gray curtain that felt like it was trying to push through the windshield. Then the world broke. First the GPS went black. Then the dashboard began to flicker, the speedometer showing 0 even as the engine roared. But the real chill set in when Old who saw the milestone. A rusted, crooked marker. He'd passed it 20 minutes ago. He drove for another 20 minutes. There it was again. The same rusted marker. The same jagged scrape on the guardrail. He was trapped. A ghost wall. A loop in time and space that has claimed more drivers than the cliffs ever could. Sweat turned to ice on his neck. And then his headlights caught something. Figure. Walking. In the middle of a mountain wasteland, in a freezing fog, a man was walking along the shoulder. He wore an old-fashioned military green greatcoat and a thick cotton cap. He never looked back. He just kept walking, his pace perfectly matched to the truck. No matter how much Old who accelerated, the man remained exactly 100 meters ahead. A silent, emerald shadow in the mist. Terrified and desperate to break the loop, Old who didn't stop. He pushed the truck harder, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Who are you?" he screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the fog. Suddenly the figure stopped. He didn't turn around. He simply stood there, a dark silhouette against the white void. Old who slammed on the brakes, the tires screaming against the wet pavement. The truck skidded to a halt. The silence that followed was deafening. Old who stepped out, trembling, a cigarette held in his shaking hand as an offering to whatever spirit held the road. He placed it on the guardrail, whispered a prayer for safe passage, and waited. The fog didn't lift, it vanished, like a light being switched off. Old who looked down. His blood turned to liquid nitrogen. His front tires were resting less than a foot from the edge. The road ahead didn't curve. It had collapsed into a sheer 500-foot drop into the abyss. If he hadn't stopped, if that man in the green coat hadn't been standing there, Old who would have driven straight into his own grave. He looked back to where the man had stood. There was no one there. Only a small, rusted object sitting on the pavement, a red star cap badge, worn smooth by decades of mountain wind. Old who doesn't drive at night anymore. Because he knows that sometimes, the things we fear aren't trying to catch us. They're trying to warn us. But the question remains. Who is watching the road when the fog comes back?